pretty sure I'm live. I suppose I'll try to talk a little louder this time. My mic's just as quiet as it was before, but I should be talking for less time, which also means that I won't have to preserve my voice nearly as much. Alright, just giving things a minute. Checking to make sure my sound is on or mic is on. Should get a little bit of echo here. Alright, I don't hear any echo there, but I do hear my mic. Just giving people a moment to show up in case anyone shows up right away. And getting my notes out as always. I suppose this makes both streams where I forgot to get my notes out right away. This talk was actually way easier to write than the last one. Like, the piles too took like, I don't know, 5-something hours with, like, I had to do a bunch of other stuff in between. Whereas I was able to get, like, all of this done in one sitting. Alright, well, I think I've got everything ready. Let me start the video.
I love Deltarune.
Same.
You love Deltarune.
Objectively true.
We all love Deltarune.
If only that were true.
This simple fact is why you rarely see any of the well-known Deltarune theorists making videos about why Deltarune secretly sucks. So I've brought it upon myself to...
I didn't even notice it with the mock-ups from Jaru. Nah, that's hilarious. 40 billion, 1 second to go. Hashtag video, hashtag YouTube, hashtag Facebook.
to fulfill that role, to be the one to go against the grain and bring forth an army of haters on this land, to blaspheme against the god of games, Toby Fox, and tell him he sucks. Despite Deltarune checking all of my boxes when it comes to very specific hyper-niche things I like in fiction, quiet autumn town, creepy underlying mystery, the general sense that something's wrong, an ever-present sense...
I like how the Five Nights at Freddy's movie poster's used, but it specifies the games. Fair enough. Also, I like Omori too.
Sense of nostalgia and longing for something lost, I still feel like the logic behind Deltarune's combat design is quite confounding. And in order to fully explain what I mean, we need to start at the beginning. Undertale as an experience only worked because of the combat system. The whole game put a spin on the concept of the ordinary RPG. While you can fight and it's usually the easiest and quickest option, the narrative asks you to find ways to become friends with every monster via the act system. Rather than take that easy way out, you're encouraged to solve a mini puzzle every battle by figuring out what combination of actions will make the monster want to stop fighting. For Vegetoid, you have to eat your greens. For Ice Cap, you have to ignore him twice in a row.
I mean, I gotta say, stuff like this is still in Deltarune.
The system isn't as simple as what buttons in what order, though. The actions all mean something, and you have to determine, based on what the monster is saying, what the best course of action is. Some enemies have multiple ways to spare them, like magic, making the combat system feel much more robust than it actually is. And that's the thing, I have a hard time calling Undertale's battle system a great system. A system, when referring to game development, is a series of mechanics or parts that work together to make a whole. I know there are many ways to define what a system is, but a good example of what I'm specifically referring to is, well, any standard RPG. Their battle systems consist of information being stored on both sides of the battlefield, and
something that isn't really brought up in this video much, that doesn't really change my criticism of it either way, is that, like, Undertale and Deltarune aren't standard RPGs. Like, the bullet hell aspect and, like, a lot more skill being involved than a lot of standard turn-based RPGs that just involve clicking the right buttons. Okay, that's a gross oversimplification of it, but I think that Undertale and Deltarune are able to get away with having systems that are a bit simpler than other RPGs because they have other skill-based things involved.
Giving you a list of actions you can take. This is a system. A pretty basic one. I personally believe that a good system is able to be scaled and works in tandem with other systems, allowing the whole game to mold together and become one whole. Exactly what I mean can be demonstrated by looking at a game like Final Fantasy VII. In the beginning of the game, you have a simple list of commands, very little.
I would also like to point out that Undertale has a hidden mechanic which causes enemies to deal more damage the higher your HP is. This is not based on your max HP, it is just based on your current HP, which essentially balances the difficulty between a neutral run and a pacifist run. And Deltarune, I believe it has something similar where if your defense is too high, or if the damage that you take from an attack is too low, then your defense will matter less.
Little damage being dealt on all sides, and the very beginnings of a good tool set. But by the end of the game, you not only have a robust battle menu offering you dozens of different movement options, but you also have multiple systems working together. Theoretically speaking, while it would kill the pacing narratively, you could add 20 hours onto Final Fantasy VII's back half and just scale up. Higher enemy damage, a deeper selection of combat options, more materia, and the battle system would still hold up.
I'd like to point out that a lot of the criticism in this video is sort of based on the assumption that all of Deltarune is gonna have, like, the same complexity of Chapter 2. I mean, that's just, like, a bad faith assumption, I feel. And, like, very obviously, as we've seen with Chapters 3 and 4, the system does get more complex. Also, just to point this out, this is, like, in no ways a personal attack towards Spooky Dude. I like quite a lot of his theories, and I believe he may have said that he no longer holds the opinions he has in this video as of Chapters 3 and 4. However, because he says some things that are just completely factually incorrect in this video to support his opinions, that's my reasoning for making a video on this.
Undertale's combat system has a limit to how high you can scale it up, especially in Pacifist. With your stats staying pretty stagnant throughout the entire game, there's only so much damage that late-game enemies can do. Yes, the core has some pretty tough foes, but Undertale's act system works the same way at the end of the game as it does in the beginning. There's only one solution to every battle. One right answer, and that answer is sparing. The strategy you have to figure out isn't what action to take, it's what should I say or do to this monster. Undertale kind of holds your hand in a way that makes a lot of the battles feel scripted. You must spare Toriel a certain number of times for the battle to end. That's the only one option, that's the strategy. Papyrus is similar, and for Undertale that works. See, I'm not complaining about Undertale at all. The thing is, it would be very hard to build a massive battle system when there's 0 point to fighting. The best option is getting away from all fights. Undertale doesn't ask you to fight the same enemies over and over, besides the ruins in a specific stretch of waterfall, and that's because Undertale doesn't want to be a proper RPG. You aren't encouraged to fight. You gain no stats or boosts from...
I think Deltarune is trying to be a proper RPG, and I think it is doing a much better job of that than Undertale.
Sparing. So it would be really stupid to bombard you with random encounters in the way most RPGs do.
One of the main reasons I'm making this video is because of how much I like Deltarune's combat system, and how in-depth I've gotten into it.
You might be wondering what I'm getting at. I'm going to move on to discussing Deltarune's combat, but before that, I want to quickly talk numbers. I watched multiple playthroughs of Undertale to gather some statistics. These were all pacifist playthroughs, none of which were exceptionally odd. I watched around 4 or 5 and took some notes. In the effort of simplicity, I'll be discussing 3 playthroughs: Playthrough A, Playthrough B, and Playthrough C. The answer I wanted to find out is how many encounters in total are in a basic playthrough of Undertale, minus any story-relevant characters or bosses. I'm not counting one-time scripted enemies either, like the 2 knights or the dogs. I'm talking purely basic enemy encounters that can be randomly caused. I don't care how many enemies are in each...
That's an important distinction that I don't think Spooky Dude touches on enough in this video. Undertale has random encounters and Deltarune doesn't.
Encounter either. I am only counting the number of encounters. In Playthrough A, they had 35 encounters in total. Playthrough B encountered 34 encounters in total. Playthrough C met with 39 encounters in total. In my own playthrough, I found that number is actually higher than what I got by about 6, but that's mostly because I know exactly where to go at all times. Let's round up actually and say 40 encounters. That seems fair to me. On the basic playthrough of Undertale, you'll have around 40 regular enemy encounters. Most of them take place in ruins and waterfall. There are only a few in Snowdin and Hotland. That's because a lot of the Snowdin battles are with the dogs, one-time story enemies, which, again, I'm not counting. The core can have, I'm not sure how much max, but in my experience, it was about 7, and that's what I got for most of the playthroughs as well.
I think there might be some rooms in Undertale that do have random encounters, but you either only get the random encounters after, like, a certain beat in the story is reached, like you have to get towards the end of the room to get random encounters in that room, and only then can you actually encounter enemies, despite the trek between the almost end of the room and the next room is, like, not enough to get an encounter. Now, I'm not entirely confident about that, but I do know that one of the spots that you grind for encounters when you're trying to deplete Snowdin's kill count is, like, the room right to the left of Snowdin Town, and in a typical run-through, you might just not get any encounters in that room. Whereas Deltarune is a lot more intentional with its encounters, since they're not random. The developers can place an enemy there, place what enemies fight alongside it, and also make sure that they know exactly how fast... Make sure that they know exactly how fast the enemy can chase you, / how hard it is to avoid. So, like, if I remember correctly, in Chapter 1, when a lot of things were still being figured out about Deltarune, that a lot of the enemies were very difficult to avoid, especially, like, there's an encounter right next to the Great Boar that chases you incredibly fast and is hard to escape from. Whereas in Chapter 2 and future chapters, a lot of the enemies are a lot easier to avoid if you want to avoid. Like, say that one room in Cyber City with the Virokun and ambulance going around in a circle, that's very easy to avoid if you don't want to get it. Yes, hello. I'm sorry if I wasn't obvious with noticing you the first time. Yeah, I'm not sure there are any other chatters here right now.
As well. So why am I so hung up on this? Deltarune's biggest flaw is its combat system. On the one hand, it's gotten a major overhaul from
This I disagree with.
Undertale. On the other hand, I feel the system is at war with the game itself. Let's start with that overhaul. In most battles, you have 3 characters.
Just found an amazing cover of 3 left with the Freedom motif and Big Shot. Interesting.
Chris,
Pretty
Susie,
sure I know
and
what you're
Ralsei.
talking about.
They cannot be swapped out. However, periodically, you'll be paired solo with a different character, like when it was just you and Ralsei in Chapter 1, or when you're walking with Noelle in Chapter 2. Characters have basic stats. Their health bars are stuck at a relatively capped amount. Your stats, specifically attack and magic, do go up if you fight enemies. As always, your stats stay the exact same after battles on Pacifist, although they do go up between chapters. The community's current thoughts usually circle back to the area of, oh, maybe the sealing the fountains makes you stronger in general. I don't know what it is lore-wise. I personally think it's something...
Now, I do think I have to say the idea that either you get stronger or you don't is misleading, since whether you play with pacifism or violence, your stats end up the same after you seal a fountain, so the rewards from getting violence aren't that great.
Else, but that's a whole different discussion. So largely, in terms of the effects of choosing pacifist, or what's easiest to refer to as violence, the results are pretty much the same as Undertale. You get stronger or you don't. Either way, you make some money from encounters. The inclusion of the pacifist option in Deltarune is odd to me, mostly because the narrative no longer calls for it. Yes, there is some discussion between characters as to whether or not we should or shouldn't fight, but the game has told us that
I won't fault Spooky Dude for this point, since after chapters 3 and 4 have released, we have a better idea of why we're doing pacifism in the first place. So, saying that we don't know now is completely fine, because obviously we didn't. It would be like claiming that we know for absolute certainty that Death is the Knight in chapter 2. So that's just a flaw that I would no longer consider a flaw by any means.
choices don't matter. And despite the fact that theoretically this concept could be turned on...
Now this just seems like a weird claim to hear being made, because even back in the chapters 1 and 2 era, people thought that our choices mattered, and it was just something that we would have to prove for those who told us otherwise. But yeah, this just seems like a big assumption to make too early. Like, our choices don't matter no matter what.
On us later on, revealing our choices did matter. So far, they largely don't. Yes, there are some narrative differences. Sparing gives you a much more cheerful ending to Chapter 1, but either way, King is defeated. Pacifism is no longer the point, so there's no real reason to want us to be pacifists. No enemies actually die.
The more cheerful ending point is, again, something that's certainly even more true for Chapters 3 and 4. Getting recruits is what stops you from the Knight killing someone, essentially.
No matter whether we play as a pacifist or violently, the end result is largely the same. So what's my problem with it? Well, let's talk about what these battles actually entail. Every battle you have 5 possible actions: fight, act, or magic depending on character, item, spare, or defend. So far, very similar to Undertale, but there are 2 very different things: the TP meter and the fact that there are 3 characters. Let's first go over each action. Fight allows you to do a single melee hit on an enemy. You time your button press to get a higher damage output. If you want to do lots of damage to any particular enemy, having all 3 characters attack will allow you to absolutely pummel them. Act,
This seems accurate.
or as I said, magic depending on character, is very interesting. It works differently from Chapter 1 to Chapter 2. In Chapter 1, Chris was the only one who can act, working nearly identically to the way it does in Undertale. In Chapter 2, Ralsei and Susie get the ability to act as well. However, rather than choose a specific action to take, it's simply S action or R action, abilities that add a predetermined amount to the enemy's mercy meter. Magic allows Susie and Ralsei to cast spells. Susie primarily has attack spells, but learns Ultimate Heal in Chapter 2, which is useless right now, but Toby implies will be important later on. Ralsei's spells are largely healing-based. Ralsei also has Pacify, which allows a tired enemy to be spared. There's a balance found between choosing to spend your TP on Susie's attacks or Ralsei's healing. Or there would be a balance if the game didn't... Or I'll get back to that. Spare...
Okay, so for the acting bit, he seems to assume that S action, R action will be as simple as they were in Chapter 2 throughout the whole game, which I can sort of see that, but it's like assuming that the Chapter 1 weapons and armor will just be the best equipment that we get throughout the entire game. I don't know how one would come to that conclusion, and again, while I am mainly focusing on Chapter 2, since it's what he is focusing on for this video, I do recall S action and R action getting more varied in Chapter 3 and 4. Just some examples I remember: S action, R action can tire Shadow Guy. There are plenty of enemies where S action will do a different thing than R action. Like, for example, the Ribic, which gets 25% mercy and tired from R action, but I think just gets 50% mercy from S action. So again, this is another thing that was expanded upon.
It works exactly as you'd expect. If an enemy's mercy meter is at 100, you can spare them. Simple. Defend allows a character to take less damage that round and also fills up your TP meter.
Okay, something important for spare leaves out an important difference between Undertale and Deltarune, where in Deltarune, sparing can only spare one enemy, where in Undertale, sparing is much more powerful and will spare all spareable enemies. This is like an integral difference, since having multiple party members is somewhat balanced out by spare being less effective.
Oh yeah, the TP meter. Essentially, there are a few ways to fill it up. Grazing very close to enemy bullets,
and the defend explanation seems accurate.
Defending, melee attacking, or specific items slowly grow your TP meter. Your spells all cost TP. Great, so we get it. Sounds good. Works good, but does it work good?
Yes.
See, remember earlier I said the system is at war with itself. Here's the thing about most RPGs. There is one way to end the battle. You deplete the enemy's health. All of your abilities...
Just to explain my thoughts on this whole point of his, to me it doesn't seem like the system is at war with itself. It just seems like there are two separate ways to play the game. And sometimes you combine those two ways, like, I don't know, the Titan fight, that involves you gaining TP to use acts, and fighting it when its defense is down.
Abilities and options in battle are aimed towards helping you achieve that goal in one way or another. That being said, there are two games that come to mind which give you a different set of tools in battle. Pokemon and Shin Megami Tensei give you the ability to, rather than fight, recruit the enemy. Pokemon gives you Pokeballs, which, when thrown at a Pokemon, allow you to capture them. Shin Megami Tensei has a demon negotiation mechanic where you can try and convince them to join you. That being said, both of these systems don't require you to completely alter your battle strategy. They're small side features that complement the main battle system, not an alternative way to play. Pokemon requires you to deal damage to the Pokemon in order to increase the chances of catching it. They work hand in hand with the combat. Deltarune, on the contrary, has two battle systems in one. See, here's the thing with sparing.
It's unique, but I don't think by any means that it's bad.
Chapter 2 made it so both Susie and Ralsei can act. Not only that, but many of Chris's acts require other characters to use up their turn. For example, when fighting Task Manager, Order X increases her mercy by 25%, which takes up the entire team, compared to Order, which only uses Chris's turn and increases it by 10. If you're going to choose to be a pacifist, your entire playstyle is different, and you will most likely not utilize any of the violent tools handed to you. There's no reason to use any of Susie's magic skills. The option that most of the time is correct is using whatever the highest percentage act is.
This is a big misunderstanding for the combat system. It seems like what most people, and probably including me, would do on their first playthrough. Look at the option that has the most party members attached to it, use it on the boss, use it on the enemy, whatever. This is just often not the right thing to do if you actually want to be efficient with fighting. Like, we will see later in this video that an important part of Deltarune is finding out what the best acts to use on each enemy are, not just the act with the most party members attached to it. Also, sometimes fighting works with your pacifism strategies for things like, I don't know, Queen's Acid Shield. Here's an important thing to remember. Titan Fight and Roaring Knight. Yep. That kind of reminds me, I feel like I might have seen some people who were struggling on either of those two fights because they didn't fully understand that fighting them is okay. Personally, I think that the large, X through the mercy meter and no acts that give mercy communicates it well, but I don't know. Some people need the game explained to them a bit more. But yeah, there are many scenarios where fighting is a part of the pacifism strategy, and even some scenarios where you can't use the pacifism strategy. And yeah, the ERM fight requires you to fight too.
For Task Manager, that's Order X. If any of your characters are damaged enough for you to worry, glance at your TP. Seeing that there's no reason to spend it anymore, because remember, the only thing you...
Yeah, oh, here's another thing. The best option for Task Manager is not Order X, and funnily enough, I'll get to the best option later in the video, because he brings up the best option and says that it's bad.
You could use it on is healing or fighting. There's a high chance you have a lot of it, and you can use Rousey's healing. Otherwise, you just have either Susie or Rousey use a healing item. In that case where you can no longer use the act that requires the whole team to chime in, you use whatever sparing option Chris has, mixed with either S action or R action, depending on who's busy. What I just described is the one correct answer to nearly every single battle in Deltarune.
No. Hey, it's fine. You showed up. I mean, plenty of people showed up like halfway through the stream last time. Although this stream will probably last like half as long. I'm already halfway through the video. Yeah, that summary of it sums up well. Just, I don't get how... I mean, you'll see the logic eventually. It gets worse.
After all, the only reason that R action and S
You've been here the whole time. That's funny.
action were added is because in a pacifist playthrough, Susie literally has zero purpose. This was a pretty big problem.
Well, now she has a purpose. Like, it was added at the beginning of Chapter 2 before Susie not having a purpose in a pacifist playthrough could become a problem. What's the issue here?
In Chapter 1, look at the super boss, the most difficult fight in the game. What was the strategy? Well, since all Susie can do is use violence or defend, the right answer is to use the highest percentage act, and periodically heal.
I mean, this fight gets around the issue with Susie and Rousey not having S action or R action, because the only ways that you can induce tired are through acts that require TP, which means that defending with Susie and Rousey helps with getting progress.
Toby got around this problem with King by making the correct strategy doing nothing. Literally.
Susie does have purpose. She has a heal spell and she has the highest HP. The heal spell, not really talking about because I'm trying to focus on Chapter 2, which is what he's focusing on for most of this. But definitely in Chapter 4, I believe Rousey's heal prayer formula is magic times 5 equals HP, whereas Susie's better heal is like magic times 7 plus a number that increases the more you use it. It's just that it also costs more. Oh yeah, good point. Is wait Chris / revive Chris, are those like the only SR actions that use TP? But yeah, going back to your earlier point, Susie having the most HP still gives her something to do, even if she doesn't have S action yet. Oh, there's another? Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm not sure I count that as an S action equivalent. I feel like that would be like snap all, or I mean normal snap. But yeah, those are like extra spell slash acts that they get. Alright, let me look at my notes. Oh yeah, another thing. TP serves another purpose besides spellcasting that I don't think Spooky Dude ever brings up. The more TP you have at the end of a battle, the more money you get at the end of a battle. Supercharge counts as S action? Alright, so I guess then Snap and Supercharge would both be S action equivalents instead of just one. And yeah, TP makes money. Susie tanks until you intentionally swap HPs in the Jevil fight. Yeah, that's... like, she's the healer, but with healing items instead of healing spells. Although, to be honest, I would not want to use Heal Prayer in the Jevil fight, because that heals like 45 HP at most right now, and I would not want to waste TP when I could be using it on Hypnosis instead. Hard mode Jevil, which version? I believe I played one on a Deltarune Boss Rush mod. Also, touching on the King gets around the issue by the way you beat him being doing nothing through the whole battle. Like, I don't really like this system. Like, Heal Prayer, honestly, is a bit useless in fights that rely on TP. I mean, yeah, if you think about, like, the Titan fight, which, like, there's a reason dual heal only costs 16% in that one. Like, Heal Prayer is probably less used than Revive Chris. The King fight is kind of the worst boss fight. At least in terms of main bosses, I'd say so. Like, Queen's fight actually has you do stuff. The Tenna fight is, like, amazing. That might be my favorite fight. And the Titan fight involves you defending, using Brighten, attacking during certain sections. But yeah, just the way that you beat King being just waiting like 15 turns is not what I enjoy. Yeah, Tenna is just peak Deltarune. But yeah, I'm also like to point out that there are quite a few bosses in Undertale that have the same method of defeating as King, like Papyrus. Like, you just wait for him to use his very normal attack, and then you spare him. Mad Dummy, you just, like, wait for all the attacks to finish, and then the fight ends. Undying, you wait for a few attacks, then you run away, and then you wait for a few more attacks. And Mad Mew Mew, which basically just plays out like Mad Dummy. Makes sense. Same person. Also, a lot of those boss fights just have useless acts. Like, say, the Mad Mew Mew fight. I think you have an action that lets you talk. It does absolutely nothing. Deltarune does not have that stuff. Except for maybe, like, using anything on Susie in Chapter 1. But again, that's Chapter 1, so it's more similar to Undertale. Papyrus is a stall, but he has more fun dialogue and interesting bullet patterns. Yeah, King does repeat quite a few of his attack patterns in the fight, doesn't he? Like, I sort of, like, I enjoy King as a character, but his boss fight is just, you use courage and defend and dual heal, and it's really hard for him to kill you. Because he doesn't, I think his attack is the same as K-Round. You can have a yapper if the fight is interesting. Yep. Actually, maybe that's why the way you defeat King is by waiting a bunch of turns. It's because Toby wanted to hear him lore dump. Alright, continuing with the video.
Defend every turn, and there you go. Versus Susie and Lancer?
Also, I don't even think that defending every turn is the best strategy for King, because if you attack him and deplete his HP, that does not abort any sort of pacifist run. So it's way quicker to attack him and just spam Red Buster.
Use your highest act.
So he says that for the Susie and Lancer fight, your strategy is to use the highest act. This is like a complete mischaracterization of this fight, and the fight itself isn't even a character, it's two characters. Like, you have two targets to act on, both of which have one act that does, like, one act that features one party member, one that features Rousey as well. The strategy is that you have to use anything or X anything on Lancer 4 times, although the fourth one will not succeed unless Susie is asleep. So if you want to speed through the fight as quickly as possible, you use Sing on Susie right before you use the fourth anything, and then she falls asleep. Or maybe you want to play more defensively because it's your first time playing, so you want to Sing whenever Susie is awake. I really just spam Rude Buster in the King fight. I can no-hit if I lock in. Fair enough. You need to make Susie fall asleep on act... Yeah, exactly. You have to use more than one act over and over again. So saying that you have to use your quote-unquote... What was it? Highest act? Best act?
You defend every turn, and there you go. Versus Susie and Lancer, use your highest act.
What was that? Hold on, there was something at the bottom of the screen. Forget about cameo. I did not notice that. Alright. Undertale battles are more like puzzles to know what even lets you spare, while Deltarune battles are about figuring out the most effective methods. Exactly. That is like the exact point that I've been making, and the exact point that I'm start to make later in this video when Spooky Dude shows his knowledge of the combat system. And saying that it's a puzzle battle and not a battle, definitely accurate. Like, also, the other thing I have to say about his commentary on this fight, he says that you have to use your highest act, but I believe that using anything on Lancer is the same as using X anything on Lancer, so actually I think it'd just be better to use anything and defend with Rousey, so you take less damage. Deltarune battles are so satisfying to figure out. Yeah, I think when chapters 3 and 4 released, I went through both chapters figuring out every single encounter and what was the fastest / most efficient way to spare all of them. That's how much I like this combat system.
Act. Versus Head Hathy, use the highest act, taking up Susie's turn, and have Rousey do nothing.
Okay, I'm not entirely sure why he's bringing up this battle, since this is more of a gag fight. The whole point of it is it's just part of Susie's character arc. Like, and also use your highest act 3 times. I don't think that's even true, because once you use it for the 3rd time, it only makes a Head Hathy spareable instead of making them leave the battle entirely. Because if I remember correctly, for the first one, Susie flirts with it and it runs away. For the second one, Rousey flirts with it and it runs away. And for the third one, Chris flirts with it and it becomes spareable. Something, Chris is really good at flirting. They're not Des.
Versus I forgot this guy's name, use Rousey's...
When Chapter 3 and 4 released, I was not such a deep fan of the rune, so I didn't dig that much, but God, I love all this now. It's hard to retroactively understand the battle because multiple playthrough make you remember the puzzle. Okay, this one. If I remember, he says something incorrect here.
Is 3 acts, one after another.
Okay, so I think there are at least 2 ways to beat the fight faster than what he's saying. So first of all, the fight requires you using Talk, Boys, Sports, and Trees. And if you'll notice, Talk Trees does not require Rousey, while the other 2 do. So if you use Talk Boys and Sports first, and use Talk Trees last, then you can spare with Rousey on the same turn, which which only takes 3 turns. And even better, if you just use the manual twice in a row, it makes Clover spareable, so then you can spare Clover on 2 turns. Yep, you sent that chat message at basically the same time I said it. You can use the manual twice. It's really not that hard.
90% of pacifist fights throw away the concept of multiple characters in your party.
I mean, I just made examples that show how they don't, so again, if you think that the best solution every time is to use the act that involves the most amount of party members, and you just don't do anything else, then I guess you're gonna think that that's the best solution, and you're gonna think it's the only solution.
The other problem I have is that sparing drops a lot of the problem solving that Undertale had.
Man, I don't even know.
In Undertale, each act did a different thing and worked in the context of your encounter with the enemy. A sad enemy, for example, with the options of cheer or laugh, would require you to first cheer them up before laughing.
Okay, Deltarune has like this same mechanic though. Like, what is it? They're the Rudens, which you can lecture or convince. Lecturing only makes them tired, while convince makes them spareable. Like, that's just one example I can think of, and it's the first enemy in the game. It's just that instead of having this does nothing, or this does nothing, this does something, it has this does something that's maybe a bit worse than the other thing. Convince spare combo hits hard. I forget if I've learned how to do that before Chapter 2 released. I think I only started getting really into the combat once Chapter 2 came out, because before then I cared about Undertale a lot more than Deltarune.
Otherwise, they'd think you're laughing at them. It's nothing mind-blowing, but it required the player to be present in the encounter. Now, a lot of Undertale's enemies would require you to just press one button twice, sure, but oftentimes you wouldn't know what that button was. When fighting Washua, trying to touch him would end with him being annoyed with you, whereas
Frogget only has like 3 acts, but they both make it spared. I mean, I remember Final Frogget is like 1 lowers attack, 1 lowers defense, and 1 makes it spareable, but it's like you're usually only going to be wanting to use the one that makes it spareable. Oh yeah, normal Frogget only has 2 acts. Yeah, that's right.
You need to have him clean you. It's like trying to understand the personalities of the enemies.
Like, okay. Again, Deltarune has the same stuff.
In Deltarune, this is largely gone. Yes, there are some enemies with what I'd call light problem solving, and a few where it's just a little mini-game like
I mean, that's another major advantage that Deltarune's whole sparing system has over Undertale's. Like, actual skill-based mini-games in the acts. Like, this is a huge difference. It's introduced, like, as early as the Scarlet Forest, I think. Got some bosses that use it, like Queen and K-Round. Like, Mouse is a particularly difficult enemy for people to spare because its minigame is a bit hard to do. Like, the minigames are another major thing that helps out Deltarune.
Aiming Chris at the wear-wires, but oftentimes it's just click the one button. Let's look at some real-time examples of my struggles with the system.
Oh, here's where it gets bad, like objectively wrong. Love how much dynamic acts become as more chapters come. I mean, yeah, things like, I mean, the spell check that Bibliox uses, I often find myself fucking up on that, because I only read the first few letters of each word to try to solve them as quickly as possible, and then I find out that this misspelling is actually at the end of the word, or something. And then, like, the sharpshoot act for the shadow guys. Apparently, if you line up your shots perfectly, you can actually make all 3 shadow guys spareable on 1 turn in the triple shadow guy battle. But what you have to do is, because each, like, bullet that you shoot increases mercy by 10%, and you shoot 3 bullets at a time. You have to shoot 3 perfect shots at the first one, 3 perfect shots at the second one, 3 perfect shots at the third one, and then you have to drag your target back a bit and shoot it so that the last 3 bullets that you have in your chamber all hit different hats of the shadow guys, so that they all get an extra 10% to their mercy, and they all get to 100% mercy with no bullets to spare. And you have to do all that before the time runs out. Like, that is amazing. And, like, I don't think I've ever done it, but I do know that it is apparently possible. And then there's other stuff like betting with Pippins, which I just found out actually makes those fights a lot easier. Like, in the past, I didn't know how the bet function worked, but now it's like, oh, the dice always go on a cycle from 1, 2, 3, and 4, so you can just neutralize the dice when they get to 4 and make the attack easier. It's hard to pull off, but it can work. But yeah, it is very hard to get more than 2 shadow guys spareable with sharpshoot. The die is set. If I wasn't entirely clear, I believe the dice, at least when you use bet, continuously cycle between 1, 2, 3, and 4. So if you pay attention, you can easily get them as soon as they turn to 4. Alright, here we go. So keep in mind that he's about to, like, criticize how you spare Task. And Task is probably the easiest enemy to spare in Chapter 2. So keep in mind, this is basically a straw man argument, and he still misses the deeper details on this.
Oh, okay, here's an interesting example. 2 tasks. Now, there's no altogether option, so I have to choose either roar or soft voice.
Just completely ignores petting. Like, he does not understand how good single party member acts can be a lot of the time. Task is the Frogget of Chapter 2. Yeah, very fair comparison to make. Like, they're probably the easiest enemy, because even though they're the enemy that you encounter second, the Werewires actually do have some interesting stuff, because they start out tired, and you've got the mini-game to cut wires, and with all party members acting, you can't spare one on a single turn. Unless, of course, you pass 5, but, you know, it requires a little bit of critical thinking. Might be more comparable to Snowdrake. I mean, yeah, I'm not entirely sure if Toby was thinking, like, I'm gonna make an enemy that directly parallels this Undertale enemy in terms of how to fight it, or if he was just going, I'm gonna make an enemy that appears frequently and is easy. Which, like, yeah, I guess Frogget also does that. Anyways, I'll let him continue.
Voice. Neither one is explained, so let's just do soft voice.
I don't get the emphasis on neither one is explained. I don't think Undertale had little explanations on acts.
I don't have S action yet, but if I did, I would have used it against one of the tasks, because remember, that's pretty much the only...
Yeah, easy second section battle. Okay, so like comparing Snowden to Cyberworld in terms of being the second area?
Logical choice when Susie and Rouse aren't doing an altogether act. Oh, look at that. Soft voice filled both enemies' mercy bar. Great, okay, so I'll just spare them then. Alright, but what would Roar have done?
Okay, so first off, I'd like to point out the alternative to this, which I think is like the fastest way to spare these 2 tasks. If you use petting, spare, and defend on the same turn, that'll give you TP for money later, and it'll instantly spare one of the tasks. If you use like soft voice and spare, that instantly gets rid of one of the tasks, and then you can spare the other one and defend twice. I think petting, spare, and defend might be slightly better, because you can defend while the other's attacking, which would reduce damage to that one party member, but that's, I guess, really getting into semantics. But the main point is, right away, I am not entirely sure if Spooky Dude knows you can act and spare on the same turn. Which, like, yeah, less bullets to dodge. I mean, that would happen even if you soft voice and spared, but yeah, taking one of the enemies out of combat instantly is majorly helpful. But still, like, I don't think I saw Spooky Dude act and spare an enemy on the same turn, like, at all during this video, so, you know, it doesn't paint his criticism in the best light, I think.
Okay, here's two more. Let's use Roar on them. Now they're tired, so I have to use Ralsei's Pacify on them, but seeing as he can only do it once, that means rather than the 2-turn battle using Soft Voice, I now have to take an extra turn to get them both. I wouldn't call...
Okay, see, here's what he misses about Roar. Soft Voice is less effective when it hits enemies that are not tasks. Roar makes all enemies tired regardless of enemy. Like, if you recall, I brought up how using Order X every turn for Task Manager was not the optimal solution. This is because the true optimal solution, if you don't guess all the quiz questions correctly, is roaring on the first turn, and then immediately pacifying Task Manager on the second turn. You have to think about Smorgasbord too. Oh yeah, I believe he gets to that as well. I don't think I would use Roar on Smorgasbord 2, though, just because one of the enemies is already tired. Although, that one encounter in the Party Dojo with, two tasks and 1 mouse? I could see Roar being used well there, because you already have enough TP to pacify on the same turn as Roar, since there were battles beforehand. And also, mouse is kind of difficult to spare sometimes. So yeah, Roar is more than just a worse soft voice. Also, if you're really having a hard time sparing the mice, you could upgrade one of the mice in that one triple mouse battle, and then Roar on the task that appears after the upgrade act. You know, that makes them all tired. Like, there are options here.
All this depth or forming strategies, this is just one attack being marginally better than another. It's not like now I know, oh, in the future, Soft Voice is more effective than Roar. These acts are enemy-specific. Not only that, but given the 3 turns sparing them using Roar requires, after using Roar, I could have used Soft Voice and spared them in the same amount of turns, rendering this act completely useless. And this also shows my thoughts regarding the lack of real problems.
Or you could petting, spare, and pacify, which would, I mean, I guess just make it comparable to Soft Voice.
Solving. There is one option, one button. It doesn't require any thinking. You don't need to figure out, oh, should I roar at it? Or would it respond more positively to being softly spoken to? It really doesn't matter. Either way, while sure, one will take an extra turn, you have one strategy, and following it gets you out of the battle. Okay, so how about Viro-Kun? Well, there's really only one option here. Take Care X. Yup.
Do you see the second option? There, if you look very subtly, there's actually something a little bit up and to the right of Take Care X. That's right, it's Susie's HP bar.
That does it. But what about Take Care? Is there any realistic scenario where that's the better option? Well, just for shits and giggles, let's find out. Okay, I got one of them. No real benefit here. Similarly, if I had R and...
No real... Okay. So, once again, this shows... This almost entirely proves that I don't think he knew about acting and sparing on the same turn. Which, again, obviously I've seen plenty of people not know about that on their first playthrough. It's something that the game tells you in, like, 2 optional tutorials. The thing is, if you're gonna make a criticism and say that Deltarune's combat is the worst flaw, you should know how to do the combat. But hey, that's just my incredibly subjective opinion. So, anyways, going back into the battle logic here. Using Take Care X uses 3 party members' turns to make 2 enemies spareable. Take Care uses 1 party member's turn to make 1 enemy spareable, and you can use other party members' turns to spare that enemy as well. Like, clearly Take Care is the better option here. Like, in Spooky Dude's hypothetical scenario, you Take Care X, you have to deal with the attack from both of them. And then the next turn, you spare twice and defend once to get 16 TP for money. In what I believe is the optimal strategy, you immediately get one of them out of combat, get 16% TP for money, and you decrease the damage that they can do to one of your party members. And then the next turn, you get another 16% TP, and you spare the second one. 2k hour user negative review versus 10-hour user negative review. I can agree normal battles are kind of the worst part about normal Deltarune, but it's not because the battles are bad. Battles are good. I just prefer to avoid battling. Yeah, like I will say sometimes I just want to get to the boss battles right away, and sometimes I don't want to be fighting stuff because maybe I've already recruited everything, or maybe I just don't want to recruit stuff. Like, actually, that's one of the big things I love about Chapter 3. If you start a new save file, you can skip straight to the first boss fight before you do a single enemy encounter. I just really like that. Big fan of the non-linearity of the first 2 boards in Chapter 3. Although, I know that's an opinion that not as many people besides me share. I'm cursed with my favorite chapter being the one that a lot of people think is the worst. Yep, the Oasis. It's so funny how they hint of that in the water cooler room. Alright, anyways, continuing.
S action, I could have just used that and spared the other one, meaning it has the same effect as using Take Care X. And see, this is my problem. Playing as a pacifist gives you way less options in combat. You no longer...
I would argue that it's because the options for fighting are just very clear and in your face. You can fight, you can use damage spell. You can defend to get more TP to gain damage spell. I guess you can pacify, whereas, you know, the acting options are a lot more complex, so he doesn't seem to get them all in this video.
Longer need to balance 3 different characters either, because there's usually one correct option that uses up everyone's...
I mean, in the scenario I just mentioned, we have each character doing a different thing. One acts, one spares, one defends.
Turn. In the case of the best action requiring only 2 characters, whoever isn't acting simply uses S or R action on the enemies. There's no problem solving, there's nothing. It's click the best buttons unless someone needs to be healed, in which...
Part of Deltarune's super secret fighting motivation is that the fighting mechanics are in your face. Yep.
You have to click the slightly less good buttons. Even in this...
I mean, that just sums up like any RPG. Ooh, if you want to fight the enemies to beat them up, you can either click the fight buttons, or you can repeatedly use the manual with all 3 party members.
This example, 3 different enemy types.
Okay, so the reason I find the 3 different enemy types encounter important is because, like, the AoE acts are less effective on the other enemies. Like, Soft Voice only does 50% to these 2, Take Care X only does 50% to these 2, I think. And this seems to be another thing that throws Spooky Dude off for this.
Not only will the right answer every time come down to one by one use their best acts, and in the case it requires 2 people, use S or R action on the other, but using any of the altogether acts fills everyone's meter 50%. I left this room 4 times in a row and did this fight over and over, each time using a different act strategy, and every time, every strategy cost the same amount of turns and didn't really change anything.
Why is it so quiet? I mean, my mic is quiet, and as for this, I'm not sure. Okay, so for reference, in this footage that he plays right here, he shows him doing this same battle 3 times. In all of those battles, he is able to beat it in 3 turns. Now, if I remember correctly, the first time that I watched this video, I went into Deltarune, went to this encounter, and beat it in 2 turns. Like, it's not that hard. I wrote down, like, the first strategy that came to mind right here. You use Petting, Defend, and Pacify on the first turn. So this instantly defeats the Werewire and brings the task to 100% mercy. And then on the second turn, you use Take Care on the Viravirakun to bring it to 100% mercy, and then just spare twice with the other 2 party members. You take one of the enemies out in the first turn for an easier attack, and then for the second turn, these 2 get taken out easily. This is not that hard to do. It just requires using singular actions over multi-party member actions and sparing and acting on the same turn. And yeah, that's probably not even the only option to use there. Unless you want to money farm this fight specifically, but why would you want to? Yeah, there's probably better options for money farming out there. Just speaking of the multi-party member actions thing, if you remember correctly, or at least if I'm remembering correctly, the tutorial battle with Noelle, where Viravirakun explains how battles work along with you, that only happens if you use Take Care X on a single... Hey, what's up? That only happens if you use Take Care X on a single Viravirakun, which would just be worse than using Take Care and Spare. It's like, and I've seen most people get that cutscene. So, like, I think this shows that Spooky Dude, yep, cool, so I do it. I mean, yeah, saves time, so I don't do it. But yeah, the thing is, the whole sequence is cool, but it only happens if you use the less optimal option, which is like, you know, that's the mindset that like, someone playing this game on the first playthrough would go. Just, the action with an extra party member is more powerful, so I'm going to use that one, instead of the action with the extra party member targets multiple enemies, so I shouldn't do it. So yeah, I'm not arguing that it's a bad scene, but I am saying that's like, it's missable, but most people get it anyways because they're not thinking deeply about the combat.
It really doesn't matter. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Spooky Dude, you hypocrite, you said that Undertale was good because...
Do you just spare the Werewire? Sure.
Because it had one option, and Deltarune is bad because it has one option. That doesn't make any sense. But my point is, A, Undertale's one option wasn't as basic as this. You have to still...
I mean, do I need to say anything? I just spent like 5 or so minutes explaining how just not basic it is.
Figure out what acts to do, and 2, the one option in Undertale was fun, whereas Deltarune's is infinitely less fun, as
I'm sorry, infinitely less fun is a crazy take.
Trying to explain to you. It just removes all depth from the combat. In a game where you're fighting a lot of the same enemies over and over. So what's the problem, though? Okay, Deltarune's pacifist combat isn't amazing. Who cares? And yeah, you're right. I wouldn't complain about something like this unless the game itself gave you a much better alternative.
Get tax expertise without hidden fees.
The combat is interesting. When
I would actually argue the opposite. Like, I think the combat in Deltarune is, like, just a bit more evolved on compared to Undertale in terms of fighting, whereas the non-violent combat is massively improved. It's just that I think the reason Spooky Dude taxes Texas, like the state. I think, again, someone mentioned it in chat earlier, but I think the reason Spooky Dude prefers the violent combat system, at least here, is because it's the more surface level option. I do like the Knight and Titan fight, but they're boss fight exceptions. You know what? I will tell you why I like those fights more than just a standard violent encounter. If you'll notice, like, the 3 or 4 fights that, like, require you to use violence, I think there are 4, all have these extra things added that, like, the normal combat system doesn't have. So the Giga Queen fight has 1 party member. It gives you a healing spell or a healing act that gets more costly each time you use it. And it also gives you, like, a special evasive option and a damage option. In what is it? Turbo dodge and whatever head mode you have. So, you know, that's like a big, like, plus for that. And it makes the fight good even though you only have a single party member. In the Spamton Neo fight in Snowgrave, a lot of the difficulty comes from only having 1 party member, yet Spamton Neo's attack is not only just as high as it is in the normal fight, but you're actually likely going to take more damage because I don't believe you get access to any armors that have Puppet Cat resistance. And the only 3 defense armor that you can get is the Royal Pin from Noelle. So, as such, a lot of Spamton Neo's attack can just straight up kill you in 4 hits. But in return, you get a very powerful healing ability in Fried Pippus. And if you don't need to heal, you have X-Slash instead. And as for the Knight, there's a big choice between attacking or defending with party members, because attacking does so little damage compared to Rude Buster that in some situations you might just want to get more TP. And also, the Knight can sometimes just one-shot party members if they're not defending, so you might want to be defending for that. Also, you use Hold Breath and in the very beginning to help a lot, so that's a bit of extra act stuff involved. And the final fight against the Titan in Chapter 4, that's definitely like another major thing that makes things more helpful, or more in-depth, more interesting. Defend Rude Buster, defend unless you're using a TP gain item, in which case attack with Rouse. And yeah, I think when I no-hit the Knight, I brought along a Tension Gem, should have brought a Tension Max, honestly, which I used in the first turn, which gave me enough TP to continuously attack instead of defending with more of my party members. But yeah, anyways, the Titan has, like, you gotta gain TP, you can defend, which makes you take less damage and gain a little bit of TP. You have Brighten, which makes you take the normal amount of damage, but makes it harder to take damage. You have Dual Heal, which gets worse and worse as the fight goes on, but is still very powerful at least the first time you use it, but because it costs TP, it also takes away your progress. There's also Wait Chris and Revive Chris. If I remember correctly, if you use Revive Chris on Chris when they're not downed, they actually get healed 100 HP, which can make it a good option in some cases. And when you're actually fighting the Titan, when its shield is down, how do I put this into words? Its attacks become more dangerous because you're neither using Brighten or defend, so its attacks become harder to dodge / they deal more damage. And during the night, if you only have Chris, you do, like, actually good damage, but not really useful since you don't just want one part. Yep, that's another, like, hidden mechanic. Also, I guess the Gerson fight would count as an example of you can only fight to win, but in that case, it's more like you fight to gain mercy. But even still, that one's interesting because healing also gives mercy to the meter. If you survive long enough, Gerson starts rapidly gaining percentage to his mercy meter. And he parries your Rude Buster, which is just a nice little addition to the fight that makes it better. So yeah, like, the fights where you have to fight are flared, like, made cooler in some way, because the fighting system is pretty surface level by itself.
Playing violently, you actually have to balance 3 characters' moves. When you're in any battle, do you want to go all in on melee attacks? Or, unlike Pacifist, should you spend some of that TP on Susie's spells? Or...
Often it gets harder and harder. Yep, if I remember correctly, OK Heal gives 9%, Rude Buster gives 8%, but Rude Buster costs less, so it is the optimal option. Dude, when I was like trying to no-hit Gerson, there were like 1 or 2 no-hit attempts that I lost due to failing a Rude Buster parry, and that that hurt me emotionally. That was horrible.
Or should you save that TP for Ralsei's healing spells? And if you're already attacking them with 2 characters, should you use an item to keep...
Okay, but like, if you're playing Pacifist, you're using TP for Pacify instead of using it for Rude Buster. And while Pacify costs less than Rude Buster, you gain TP from attacking, so it's probably not going to be that much easier to get off.
Keep another character alive? The Task Manager fight specifically is interesting in the sense that you have to choose which enemy to fight as well. The bullet hell sections show you each individual...
Also, there are acts that cost TP. I mean, I guess there are more that appear in chapters 3 and 4, but even in chapters 1 and 2, like the Jevil fight has acts that cost TP. Giga Queen and, I mean, Normal Queen has Red Buster and Dual Heal. The Rules fight has the Claim House mechanic. Or Take House? Is that what it's called?
Enemies' attacks. In this fight, we see that Task Manager's attack isn't that hard to dodge, but her 2 cats make things difficult. Do you focus on Task Manager, or do you take out the cats? There is variation in how you choose to play.
I kind of find it funny that he brings up Task Manager so often, or just brings up tasks as well, because they just make my point easier to prove. Like, Take House 1 is free, 2 is 8%, yep, increases further. Because let's say you don't roar at one of the tasks, and you don't solve the quiz beforehand. If you defeat the tasks with violence, you know, that just removes them from combat. But if you spare them, that actually adds mercy to Task Manager's mercy meter. So, like, you can just single out the tasks when you're playing non-violently, and you can single them out when you're playing violently, and I don't see why this is brought up. Like, it's only something you can do violently. Oh wait, I know why it's brought up, because Spooky Dude thinks that the only best option to use during this fight is Order X over and over again.
Sure, Pacifist allows you to choose which order to pacify an enemy, but regardless of your decision, it takes the same amount of turns. And all...
Okay, a big problem with this flowchart is it's like, I think, like, I do not know when you're going to be using Rude Buster outside of boss battles. Like, if you attack an enemy with all 3 party members, that is very often enough to instantly take them out of combat. So, like, if you're able to beat, like, an encounter with 2 enemies in, like, 2 turns with fighting, you're probably not even going to have the TP to use Rude Buster. And even if you get Rude Buster, you might just want to save that TP for getting money later anyways. Like, yeah. Most enemies are weak, especially if you have good weapons. Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially if you have attack boosting armors and powerful weapons, you're usually able to, like, beat enemies with just, like, Chris and Susie attacking. I mean, like, I think Mouse and Pop-Up both have 120 HP, and if I remember correctly, Chris with the Mecha Saber and no other attack boosts in Chapter 2 can one-shot the Mace and the Pop-Up with a perfect attack. Just one party member. Actually, speaking of Pop-Up, you know, enemies in Deltarune get a lot more complex. Besides, like, just Task and Virokun. Like, for the pop-ups, you can spare them much faster than normal with the 1 or 2 pop-up versus single Chris encounter. If you click on them repeatedly, because for the first time you click on them, an extra pop-up appears, but then the second time you crash the pop-ups, and that lets you beat them in 2 turns.
Oftentimes, the best act option for one enemy fills the bars of the other enemies. And there's some...
Yep, secretly click. Also, like, the best option usually fills the bars with other enemies. I mean, again, this gets a lot worse when you're fighting different enemies. Different enemies types that take less from... Oh, made more tea? That's nice. I feel like I remember having tea to, make my throat feel better in streams in the past.
Something else. Ralsei's Pacify spell works if an enemy is damaged enough. If an enemy has a...
Okay, I just like to talk about this because, like, him bringing up the Pacify spell as, like, a major part of the violence combat, but not the pacifism combat, is crazy. So, first of all, as I just said, a lot of the time you can bring an enemy's HP from full to 0 in a single turn. So you're not going to get to use Pacify there. And even if maybe the enemy hangs on with a sliver and is able to be pacified, would you rather spend 16% TP to pacify it? Or would you rather just attack it with any attack? Which will remove it from combat and make you gain TP. It's awesome with honey, especially if... Oh, what kind of tea is it? That sounds good. Yeah, I also had apple cider with a stream once. Like, warmed up apple cider in a mug. That's good. So, that is just, again, like, I don't get why he's bringing up no acting pacifist run would be hard. Yep. Yeah, I don't get why he's bringing up pacifist or pacify in this, but not in the non-violent route. Because I've probably used pacify way more. Green tea and Earl Grey. Oh, that's cool. I mean, I believe a lot of enemies in Chapter 4 have 240 HP. If you attack them and they become tired, that's... I'm turning into green gastic. If you attack them and they become tired, that's probably enough on its own to attack them again and defeat them instead of using Pacify. I don't know why I'm getting so hung up over this.
Tired status effect, there's a great option to defeat them quickly. There's variation, and that's found especially in a fight like Jevil. Rather than clicking the one...
The variation in question for, like, normal encounters is just clicking the fight button 6 times in a row.
Right button, that simple choice between using a high-cost attack or saving your TP for health is incredibly effective here. Not only all that, but by fighting you get stronger. Your stats go up. There's a reason to want...
Like, slightly, and they end up the same at the end of the chapter anyways.
To fight enemies. Now, this is no Final Fantasy. I'd say this combat is still pretty surface level, but for what Deltarune is, a mostly narrative experience in the shape of an RPG.
Whoa, the surface level combat is surface level. And also, again, even the fighting combat being surface level is excused because hitting the perfect attacks feels good.
It works perfectly. So, is that it? My conclusion is that Deltarune's pacifist system is infinitely less interesting and less fun than the combat? Well, no, because that's not really proof that Deltarune is flawed. Why not just choose to play violently if I like it so much? And that...
Also, he brought up Jevil, and, like, whether you're playing Jevil non-violently or violently, in both cases, you're saving up to 50% TP to use a powerful progress-making move. It's just that it's either Hypnosis or Rude Buster. And yeah, I really think I'm just making the opposite point here. If I wanted to criticize Deltarune's combat, which, like, yeah, I have some criticisms, I'd be criticizing the violent combat, because I don't think it's interesting enough. I think maybe we could use a few more damaging things. Maybe more things that influence how the fight system works. I mean, like, Undertale had its weapons gradually get, like, harder to use. Like, the burnt pan, empty gun, all that. Secret bosses don't count for pacifist yet. Oh yeah, that's another thing. I think I'll get to that in a bit. I have a note written down about that. And yeah, Rouse getting a damaging spell would be nice. Like, hopefully it happens in Chapter 5, because we know he has fire magic. There's the enemy in Chapter 4, where, like, he just lights it up with using fire. Rouse gets Fire Shock in Chapter 5. I mean, I think people were predicting that he'd get Fire Shock in Chapter 3, because, like, Toriel Fire Magic, she'd be in Chapter 3. And, you know, she was just sleeping for the whole thing. But, you know, considering that Asgore seems to be, like, hopefully a much more major character in Chapter 5 than Toriel was in Chapter 3. Oh yeah, the turtle. The Wingding Gas Turtle. Like, I could see Rouse getting Fire Shock in Chapter 5. Maybe it'd be something like PK Fire in Earthbound, where it deals fire damage to all enemies, instead of Ice Shock, which deals high ice damage to one. Especially since both the Knight and the Titan are fighting only boss, I expect at least a third fighting only boss. Oh yeah, Gas Turtle and Wingblade. Yeah, right away when I noticed, like, the Wingblades are the familiars of the Wickabells, and the Wingblades are Wing, and the Wickabells are Ding, because they're bells. And then Balthazard, like, as I heard someone else point out, is a turtle with gas. Like, was this intentional? Are we gonna get, like, a normal enemy in Chapter 7 called the Wingding that's just a fusion of the Wingblade and Wickabell? I hope so, that'd be funny. Okay, I think I was looking at my notes. Castor's screaming and kicking in the void. Alright, was it something he said that I wanted to object to?
Deltarune is flawed. Why not just choose to play violently if I like it so much? And that's where
I expect we might actually just see Anor fight Gaster, but who's to say? I mean, yeah, I hope we, like, actually see him and it's not just, nope, sorry, that's Gaster's in the third game that Toby makes. I mean, he seems like an actual character in Deltarune.
where my second argument comes in. Not only is Pacifist less interesting than Violence in terms of gameplay, but Deltarune effectively forces you to play Pacifist.
Okay, forces is a strong word. So, like, many of the playthroughs I've seen from other people show people happy to engage in the new recruit system that was introduced in Chapter 2. And it's like, if people have played Undertale, they're probably not going to go into the game wanting to use the violent option in combat. And even if you do want to use violence, there are actually quite a few bosses that you can beat violently without, like, altering the pacifist run or changing the story negatively, I believe. Like, let's see, there's Lancer and Susie, King, Jevil, Clover in the Party Dojo, Rules in Chapter 2, and then in Chapters 3 and 4, Oh yeah, Giga Queen and Spamton Neo as well. And in chapters 3 and 4, there's also Tenna, the Knight, Lenino and El Nino in the Party Dojo, the Hammer of Justice, maybe the Titan spawn, I don't know, like, we get stronger from defeating them. And the Titan. So, like, you don't get consequences for any of those. And yeah, like, you can break Birdley's arm, so, like, if you defeat Birdley with violence in either of the fights, or defeat Queen with violence, Birdley will break his arm. But, like, it's separate from recruits, but it's still a negative change to the story. So, I'd count it as something bad happening. And yeah, it's more fun to have recruits. Like, fighting is pointless with the whole recruit system. Yep, like, you're incentivized to recruit, but, like, if the game has a moral option and an immoral option, and it wants to make you choose the moral option, is that a bad thing? Like, I wholly disagree with fighting being the more fun system,
as it punishes you for playing differently. Deltarune has one more system I haven't mentioned, the recruit system. If you spare enough of a certain enemy type, they are recruited, and they join your castle town. You can see them later and read about them and pose them in the cafe, they help you during important narrative moments, and more. There is absolutely a benefit to collecting them all. But Spooky Dude, wait a minute, how does this force you to be a pacifist? Well, the thing is, the system makes it so you can never, ever kill. Why don't you fight them, weaken them, and then pacify them?
Like, when I'm watching people who are playing Deltarune for the first time, they usually don't feel the sudden urge to beat the crap out of some random enemy.
First off, you don't reap the benefits of fighting like increased stats. Second, pacifist is
plus 2 HP per encounter. Magnificent.
Usually the easier option. Third, if, God forbid, you slip up and fail to calculate exactly when you should stop hitting them, and you kill an enemy, they are never able to be recruited. That
is... Huh? Hold on.
Stop hitting them, and you kill. Third, if, God forbid, you slip up and fail to calculate exactly when you should stop hitting them, and you kill an enemy, they are never...
So I think what he's doing is he's suggesting that either someone would attack an enemy to try to pacify it, or he's suggesting that people would just want to try to fight enemies without killing them for no reason. You know, what you do when you're bored. No one gets bored and kills enemies. Spooky Dude bloodthirst theory.
Never able to be recruited. That permanently loses.
Unless you exit out of your save file and reset. Deltarune's pretty lenient with save points. It usually gives pretty frequent saves. I mean, like, that room where Sweet Cat and Cake sell bagels and the room with the arcade machine, like, those both have save points and they're right next to each other, I think. Or no, it's the room where Sweet Cat and Cakes have their shop, but that's just one room away from the other save point.
Them. Not only that, but if you kill an enemy you've already recruited, they get unrecruited. It's like when you're lowering a Pokemon's health so you can catch them, except if you accidentally beat one, you can never get them again. This means that you're punished for ever playing too violently. Not only that, but fighting makes the narrative infinitely less satisfying in a way that seems like it's purposefully trying to punish you.
Why does it keep saying infinitely? I don't get the hyperbole there.
Queen is sad that Castletown is empty, specifically asking for the people that you killed. Birdley's arm breaks, the Thrash Machine no longer has everyone's support, and again...
I mean, you can fight the shield just fine without breaking Birdley's arm. If you really want to fight, those 3 shields combined have like 1,400 HP.
Game where the silly fun characters and moments are some of the best parts, fighting really hurts the experience. Regardless of whether you're okay with losing the recruits, stopping you from retrieving the collectibles counts as punishment. But before I move on, I have to admit, I think I know why he did this. Why he added mechanics between chapters 1 and 2 to make it so that fighting is punished. And it all comes down to Noelle. Say you like the cool spells. You've been fighting all these enemies, there's no reason not to, and you...
I've done Rude Buster on Queen's Shield when I was replaying for Chapter 3 and 4. I mean, yeah, it's optimal. Like, I think Red Buster can sometimes just one-shot the weaker shield, at least. And Rude Buster does big damage. And even if you don't use Rude Buster, I think fighting is just more helpful to deplete the health of the shield than using Toast.
You get Noelle on your team. You fight an enemy and you realize, hey, she sucks at melee. Well, she's got a spell. Ice Shock.
Like,
cool.
This is an
All right, let's try it out.
I guess.
Huh. The enemy is frozen in place. I wonder if this is important. And while many players might not realize it right then and there, I bet a bunch of people would have accidentally started or found out about the route that's supposed to be hidden. Sure, it still requires specific steps, but making it so that fighting is punished adds that extra barrier around the route that guarantees.
I mean, fighting was already punished in Chapter 1. It's just, you get a slightly worse ending to the chapter.
As most players won't find it right away. Here's the thing though, it irks me because, like I said, Pacifist is very tedious at times. Queen's Castle has some of the most annoying enemies to spare. This puzzle is cool the first time, I guess, but really, really annoying the second or third time. Not only is it much less fun than Undertale, but there's so much more of it. I watched those Undertale playthroughs, and on average, it took the player about 40 seconds to a minute to beat the very, very late game enemies, like Night Knight and the core enemies. The longest time I saw was 1 minute and 30 seconds, and it's not like they were a wizard or anything. In the playthroughs I watched of Deltarune, the average player took about 1.5 minutes to beat the 3-mouse battle, and 45 seconds to beat the 2-mouse battle. And I saw 2 different players get stuck at the Swatch battle for 2 minutes. That's a really long time, especially since many enemies respawn in a game where there's zero benefit to fighting them.
This point just kind of pisses me off, like, not that much, but it's like, first you're saying, oh, the combat's too simple, and then like, oh, the combat's too complex, these people are taking too long with these fights. Undertale was easier than this. Like, yeah, I guess the triple mouse battle and triple swatch battles are, you know, pretty hard compared to stuff in Undertale. But, like, why is this a problem? I don't, like, if there's a change in difficulty, your battle is taking too long, I don't think that's an issue, like, at all.
In a game where backtracking is highly, highly encouraged. Now we know that there's eggs, crystals, and bosses and routes tucked away in the corners of each Dark World. That's going to mean a lot of running around and trying to find secrets. And that's going to mean a lot of encounters. There were about 35 to 40 non-single-time enemy encounters in Undertale. Do you know how many there are in Deltarune so far? On the average playthrough that doesn't even look for the super bosses? 35.
Oh no, there's like the same to less amount of battles in a game or demo that's about as long as Undertale was. What is the issue? There's more combat. Yeah, one has 35 battles, the other has 35 battles. They're both the same length. You're tutu.
And you can't flee them. And we're not even 25%.
Oh, that's another thing. You can't flee them. I don't have much of an issue with that because in Deltarune, the encounters aren't random. Like, I feel like Undertale needs to have a encounter fleeing system because the battles are random. You can't really control when you get them. So having a way to escape them makes sense. In Deltarune, if you want to escape a battle, you escape it in the overworld.
And into the game. I think the final point I want to make is that on a narrative level, Deltarune Chapter 1 tells us that the world isn't black and white. Sometimes we should try to get by without fighting, but fighting is okay. It's not an automatically bad thing. Whereas Chapter 2 takes a sharp left turn and tells
you can avoid the fights in the overworld pretty easily. Yeah, absolutely. Especially after Chapter 1. Like, I think earlier in the stream I said something about Chapter 1 was when Deltarune didn't fully know what it wanted its gameplay to be yet. So, like, a lot of the enemies in that chapter are a lot harder to escape from. But in Chapter 2, like, there's some enemies that just barely even notice you unless you get right next to them. And sometimes you can run faster than they do anyways. So, you're in control of whether you want to fight them. And then there are some fights that are very obviously impossible to avoid. Like, the triple mouse battle in Chapter 2, or the double... I forgot how to pronounce them. Gay? The triple cool Chinese ghost guys. in chapter no double cool Chinese ghost guys in chapter 2, and also the double wing glade later in chapter 2. Like, all three of those counters are pretty obviously unavoidable. Like, one of them, there's just cheese blocking your path, and in the other one, the enemies are just too fast for you to escape.
Tells us no, it is a bad thing by default, never do it. And that's the point of the...
Okay, no, it doesn't tell you this. Like, what I got from that is, yeah, not fighting and being nice to people is pretty great, but sometimes if someone doesn't want to accept us being nice, we're probably going to have to fight them. I think we're going to have to kill this guy, Rousey. So I think if you're beating the crap out of someone who could be easily convinced to join your town in a couple, like, minutes, it makes sense that you get punished for that. When he's like, the book guy, move automatically and you dodge. Choose not to fight, but some people you need to fight. I mean, yeah, like, it's... Again, this just seems like a misinterpretation, which is weird, because from what I remember, Spooky Dude isn't a bad theorist.
This video. Not only is the pacifist system infinitely worse than it is in Undertale...
Bro, I don't get the hyperbole here. Stop saying infinitely worse.
Infinitely worse than the other combat options in Deltarune, very tedious the more you fight the same enemies and press the same buttons, but it's also forced on you, as the more interesting options are punished. But there's one more point to discuss. See, there is a fantastic, really, really well thought out argument that kinda does blow my whole stance on this away.
Who gives a shit?
Who cares? Chances are, if you're watching this years after any release of the game, you liked the game enough to not mind the pacifist gameplay.
That's an understatement.
I enjoyed my playthrough of Chapter 2 so much that I played it again. Multiple times, actually. Sure, I really do believe the arguments I'm making here. I think that the pacifist gameplay isn't as good as fighting, but I don't really think it's ruining the game or anything like that. Like I said, Deltarune is more of a narrative experience than a game trying to build a robust combat system. If anything, I think we'd see an influx of people agreeing with me only after the rest of the game comes out, if it truly is about 25 to 30 hours to beat the game on the main route.
Yeah, I have not seen this because I don't think this opinion has the facts to back it up, as I spent a good portion of this stream saying, like...
Maybe then people would start seeing my point. But I really don't think that I'm going to mind that much. On top of which, while the depth in terms of decision-making isn't that great, a lot of the acts are little mini-games.
Do I need to say anything anymore?
Games that are cute and fun. Capturing the mice, throwing Chris, stacking Bloxer, it's just fun little mini-games that make the experience enjoyable. Don't take this as me going back on what I'm saying. If this isn't addressed at some point, and the pacifist gameplay stays as surface level as it is right now, and that one strategy is the same strategy we use on endgame enemies, I will certainly complain about that.
Okay. I'm not making any attacks on Spooky Dude for making this video. I just found it strange that there are so many things in this video that I completely disagreed with, and how there were so many points that seemed poorly researched and false. I still like Spooky Dude's theories, I mean, this sticks out like a needle in a haystack compared to his other stuff. So, in conclusion, I believe that I remember Spooky Dude saying that because of the further increased combat complexity in Chapters 3 and 4, he no longer finds the combat to be an issue. However, I did find it strange that he found the combat actions in Chapters 1 and 2 to be so flawed in the first place. Because it seems like he no longer has these opinions, or no longer feels as strongly about them, I mostly focused on Chapter 2, since it was what this video was covering. Overall, this video was still far more tolerable than Piles 2 ever was, because at the very least, I didn't end this video with a figurative bad taste in my mouth. Spooky Dude's still a good theorist, and I feel bad for being so negative about his opinion in this. And, I mean, you know what? This didn't take very long at all. Would anyone here be willing to stick around for me to just review and watch Woody Theory as well? I'd be down for doing that. I mean, anyways, that's all, unless I watch another video of his after this. I like Deltarune's combat system, and I certainly do not dislike Spooky Dude. Like, yeah, I would definitely be down for going through Woody Theory review, since this has not taken too long. I keep saying it without fully realizing. Because, yeah, I like Woody Theory. It'd probably be a lot easier to watch a video that I agree with than something that I disagree with. And since I like Spooky Dude's content, I want to be positive about his content, considering what I just did. You're taking too short. Yeah, sure, I'll watch Woody Theory as well. The second one. Alright, would it be fine if I watched this at maybe 1.25? Since, I mean, I might still be pausing just to say things that I agree with instead of things that I disagree with. How have I not liked this yet? I liked the video that I disagreed with, but not this. Alright, anyways, time to theorize about Woody.
And as the years go by, yeehaw! We'll never die.
Woody Theory is dead. When chapters 3 and 4 came out, the lack of a cowboy boss fight combined with the references to Friend Inside Me seemed to confirm that Woody was not intended to be a boss within Deltarune.
Something joke about it being revived with a dark fountain.
Although, there is a chance, a hope lying at the bottom of our hearts, an idea, a dream, a theory. That's right, welcome to Woody Theory 2. Hello everyone, my name is...
Okay, first off, like, my general opinions on the overall theory, I very much like it. Like, I think, like, I mean, Chatter says Woody Theory 2 is the far less likely but possible outcome. I think, in my opinion, Woody Theory is the most likely because it is, like, the only one that I have seen evidence for. Like, other stuff is just, it is a thing that, I don't know, flower, you know, Asgore has flowers, we know that. But I think one of the biggest reasons I believe in it a lot is because in chapter 2, they directly foreshadow Gerson appearing as the chapter 4 secret boss. The reason they foreshadow him appearing is because he's important enough to be the secret boss. Whereas chapter 3, like, they do a fair bit of foreshadowing for some form of cowboy show secret boss. I think it'd be funny, but yeah, we have no idea what chapter 5's Dark World could be. I mean, like, I feel like we actually do have a pretty good idea. Like, I don't know how much of it Spooky Dude brings up in this, but, like, there's the whole Asgore prophecy thing being labeled Boss 3 in the files. There's the Field of Pink and Gold line from Gerson. And then there's secret dialogue from Miss Mizzle about a blue flower who, like, serves under her or something.
Spooky Dude, and as you may have seen, there was no Woody-inspired secret boss in Deltarune Chapter 3. The truth is, Woody Theory is basically dead. The entire argument in favor of Woody Theory hinged upon it being in a TV Dark World because the Woody character probably can't exist otherwise. Seeing that he was nowhere to be found in that Dark World, it seems safe to assume that Woody Theory is officially deconfirmed. Unless, of course, you read between the lines. My name is Spooky Dude. Make sure to like, subscribe, and also go subscribe to my new channel, Spooky Vision, for upcoming Five Nights at Freddy's and other horror-related content. Now, let's discuss. It all begins with Tenna. In Chapter 3, Tenna has some dialogue that nearly made me puke the first time I read it.
I remember seeing that reaction. It's great. I cannot predict the secret boss after the night. A lot of the predictions I've seen for a Chapter 5 secret boss have been, like, based on Gerson in some way. Because if you think about it, a lot of our predictions after the Chapter 2 era were like, alright, the secret boss is going to be Spampton, and it's going to be Spampton again. And it's going to be just like Spampton, except different this time. And now in the chapter 4, we're like, alright, it's going to be a friendly mentor character who has a one-on-one fight with Rousey, because we already had the one-on-one fight with Susie. And maybe this character is who teaches Rousey Fire Shock, and maybe it's Sans, because sure, maybe Sans has a Shadow Crystal. Like, I just think it's going, like, just trying to build patterns when I think the patterns between each secret boss aren't that clear. It's either Woody or Sans, but I think for all we know it could be like Batman. You know what? Sure, why not spin that into a theory too? There's some line from Alphys about Asgore seeming like a superhero, so there we go. Asgore's the secret boss and also Batman. Was gone for a sec? Alright, you're welcome back. I'm watching Woody Theory now because I wanted to be positive about some of Spooky Dude's content. And also, I think watching a video I agree with is easier than watching a video that I disagree with.
When confronted by Chris, Tenna says, "By the way, seen your father recently? Your brother? You know, we still got that cowboy program. The one your dad likes. He was..."
I think I might have been saying, like, Spooky Dude's reaction to this is great. He, like, just stops reading this as soon as he says cowboy program and then just screams. And, like, fair enough. I can't remember if I got this line when I was playing. I might have, but that's just, it's so peak.
Bouncing you on your knee as you watched it together.
I think tying Asgore together with the cowboy program, both in this and in the unused but very likely canon to some extent board 3, like, those are both major pieces of evidence for Woody Theory.
Sorry, Chris. Sorry, I have to go. This isn't the only reference to Asgore enjoying a cowboy show. You know the mantle minigame? Well, the first and second stages reflect the first and second stages of Tenna's game. However...
I'm sorry, do you have a bird on your end? Yeah. It says woo hoo ho ho hoo. Is your bird Santa Claus?
The third stage in the mantle minigame is this weird empty city. As it turns out, though, this was actually meant to reflect a third, completely removed level from Tenna's game. By restoring this city level, we can find a scrapped quiz section that asks about Asgore's favorite puppet cowboy show. Chris, which show...
They even specify that it's a puppet cowboy show? Like, come on. Also, I'd like to point out that, if I remember correctly, this was scrapped somewhat early in the development of chapters 3 and 4 because they were working on chapter 3 first. And, like, if this was left unaltered from the version that they originally planned to have in the game, this might have been made before Woody Theory existed. I'm not sure. I'm not entirely sure on the timeline of this, but there is the possibility that this line was implemented before Spooky Dude came up with Woody Theory. It's outside and taunting me because I don't know what kind of... What? Yeah, we can't take the scrap content too literally. Like, that's fair enough, but I think that it's an entire extra segment that was likely originally planned to be used, and in its place, they still have references to the cowboy show that Asgore likes. Like, they made sure to keep that bit in, even if they scrap this. Like, obviously, there could have been a lot of this that was changed, or a lot of this that was just put in here as a joke. Still, I think it is compelling.
What was Asgore's favorite? The answer being cowboy show. Now, when does Asgore's favorite cowboy puppet show air? The answer? It was cancelled, which Tenna is surprised by. So now what we've established, if you assume this quiz being scrapped doesn't automatically discredit its canonicity, is that in the world of Deltarune there was a cowboy puppet show that was cancelled. That was the big leap in logic of Woody Theory 1, that when Toby spoke of a cowboy segment that was scrapped, it being scrapped was...
That is a major point for Woody Theory 2. Woody Theory 1, if I remember correctly, had, like, basically zero in-game evidence. This, like, basically all of the evidence is in-game and not taken from Toby's Tumblr account in 2020.
Actually part of the storyline, and it was a reference to Woody's Roundup, the show starring Woody that was canceled in Toy Story 2. And here it is, written in plain letters. That was entirely correct. Calling it not just a cowboy show, but a cowboy puppet show confirms it. There's really no other show this could be referring to. So then, what does that tell us? All we know now is that there were originally references to Woody that were ultimately scrapped. How can we take this to the furthest extent and use it to argue that a Sheriff Woody character will appear in a future chapter? Well, there's a new connection to be made here. The Puppet Cowboy show was Asgore's favorite, and there's a certain reference that might tell us a little more about this cowboy. One of the prizes that Tana advertises is a floral cowboy curtain. So there was a cowboy show Asgore liked. There are references to a floral cowboy curtain. And we know that Chapter 5, based on
I'd say this is decent enough evidence.
Description of a garden charred in a fiery inferno, as well as a prophecy about the Flower Man being trapped in an asylum, will most likely take place in a Flower King Dark World. What does this all mean? Well, look in Asgore's depressing bedroom. Do you see it? That's right.
Yep, very interestingly. So I can't remember if Spooky Dude brings this up, but Asgore has a TV. And I believe there's a Shudda NPC in Chapter 3 that mentions how, like, something about before Tenna came around, there were the days of the black and white or something. Meaning that, like, the Dreamer family likely had an old black and white TV before they got Tenna, which might be this TV. Now, I can't say this with certainty. I'm only remembering the lines vaguely. Actually, you know what? I got the Deltarune text dump. I can go look it up. Black and white Gaster TV theory. Copies are monochrome? Monochrome just like Friend Inside Me? Oh my goodness, the lag is tremendous on this. Okay, hold on. Ah, here it is. Actually, yeah, this is good, I think. In the once upon a time, there was a land like Purple Cliffs, a frozen waste, watery basin, metal desert. So that seems to be connecting, like, the objects in the Dreamer household to the areas in Undertale. But this theater was built upon that, and it grew. Not everyone liked the change. Some people left. Of course, that was in the days of the black and white. So this implies that the Dreamers got a black and white TV before getting Tenna, which could likely be this older TV in Asgore's shop. Scroll a bit down. This jail is still pissing me off. I am the original Starwalker. Also, it should have said copies are grayscale. Yeah, that's right. Monochrome doesn't mean, like, black and white. It just means, like, all the same color, I believe.
Right, a television. Just because the theorized Woody didn't appear in Chapter 3's TV...
Also, you know what else is black and white? Woody's Roundup and Friend Inside Me.
Dark World doesn't mean that Asgore doesn't have a few old tapes containing some episodes of the cowboy show he loved so much. maybe Woody Theory isn't dead, and the Cowboy Secret Boss is going to be in Chapter 5 rather than Chapter 3.
Yeah, she is
But
the
wait,
same color.
there's more. Just yesterday, there was a whole debacle involving Toby Fox's YouTube channel. Basically, he randomly released a playlist
Kind of a joke. Castor's friend inside me.
he put together called Deltarune Covers and Remixes on his official YouTube channel, like confirmed to be official, containing exactly what you'd expect. Covers and remixes of Deltarune songs by popular creators across YouTube. However, as noticed earlier yesterday morning, there was one song out of place. Toy Story.
Okay, if I remember correctly, this isn't, like, confirmed. Like, I think Materia is running the channel. It's just that they're the official uploaders of Toby Fox's music in this case. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe, I mean, it is Toby Fox's channel. Maybe he just decided to do a shitpost.
Story, you gotta.
Yeah. At the very least... Okay, this is gonna sound really out there, and I don't believe this theory, but imagine. One of the, like, Materia employees who's, like, working for this and compiling a list of Deltarune covers and remixes has already listened to some of the tracks from future chapters, finds You've Got a Friend in Me, and thinks that it's a remix because they sound similar. Now, again, like, who hasn't heard of Toy Story? It's just a shitpost crack theory. He might have logged into his public rather than his private. Oh yeah, maybe Toby has some YouTube alt and he accidentally posted this to his main. That's also a funny idea.
A Friend in Me. This was, again, let me once more remind you, added to a playlist called Deltarune Remixes and Covers by Toby Fox himself. This can't...
At UTDR, #1 fan is Among Us, you say?
Can't be an accident. Shortly after everyone on social media noticed it, he suddenly removed it. This is a shitpost at worst and a disturbing threat at most.
That's such a good
Originally,
line.
I was willing to consider the Cowboy Mike boss battle, fit with a friend inside me reference, the official end of Woody Theory. After all, when you make the joke in-game and you openly put it out there, it sort of loses its legs. It's like he's acknowledging it and saying, you know, that's not real, but here's what I can give you.
Okay, I think this might sound a bit weird. I think that fight actually gives more evidence towards Woody Theory. Because if you look at the other mics, the first one, the bird is still here. If you look at the first mic, it has, like, the same smile that Tenna has when he first starts to come to life in the Dark World at the end of Chapter 2. And is, like, very much based on one of the fan Tenna designs. So that first mic is based on Tenna, who, as we all know, is a character who exists in Deltarune. The second mic is Cat Mike, who very obviously friend. Like, pink and yellow eyes, cat. Friend has gotten even more cat motifs in chapters 3 and 4. And trying to argue that friend isn't important because Cat Mike exists is not something people do. And the final mic, well, what if that mic is also based on a character that already exists like the other two? You know, a certain cowboy-related character? Also, if I noticed, like, somewhat recently, the first mic uses attacks that involve microphones and attacks that involve... Or, no, I think just attacks that involve microphones. The second mic uses attacks that involve microphones and attacks that involve cats. But the third mic doesn't use any cowboy, like, western, or even gun motifs. They use more microphones and cats. And that could be because Toby had ideas for, like, cowboy western themed attack patterns, but didn't want to spoil any of them. So instead just reuse the previous stuff. Third mic isn't real. We made them up.
But to then go ahead and put this song on the playlist, it's like adding fuel to the fire just when it was about to go out. Why do it unless, of course, there are truly bigger things in store for us? Another thing worth mentioning is that since I made the original Woody theory, I never actually considered it possible that it would come true, for one big reason I've never really spoken about.
Third mic is
Woody
Cold
and the
War
mannerisms that the fanbase has sort of given corrupted secret boss Woody interpretations are just too similar to Spamton.
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that this is a good piece of evidence against it, because many of the secret boss interpretations for Chapter 3 were just Spamton again, and many of the secret boss interpretations I've heard of for Chapter 5 are just Gerson again. So, like, this is just something the fandom does.
Puppet who was, in a way, cancelled with a comically long nose who hangs on strings like a marionette. If you ask
Okay, I will give that. That is just similar to Spamton.
me, Spamton is just too Woody-like to go and then do another Woody-specific secret boss. But then Tenna happened, a character who by all means is very similar to Spamton. Besides the TV head, he's very similar to the characterizations and mannerisms that the fanbase commonly associates with a sort of pre-corrupted Spamton. He even talks in a similar way, with wacky words scattered throughout his
Batman will
dialogue.
be the secret boss, of course.
Toby actually spoke about this on Blue Sky shortly after Chapter 3 and 4's release. He said, "Before the game came out, I thought people wouldn't really care about Tenna and simply dismiss him as a budget Spamton. I'm glad everyone seems to like him just fine. I see those two as intentionally similar characters who mutually enhance each other. You know, like spy versus spy." So here's Toby openly explaining that Tenna and Spamton were designed with similarities in mind. This opens the door for a Woody-themed secret boss with some similarities to previous characters. On top of this, if this theoretical floral Woody is based on flowers or plants in some way, there's always a chance that he's not as straightforwardly Woody as one would expect. However, there's even more. See, so far, I've basically opened the door for there to be the possibility of a cowboy show. However, nowhere in-game is it implied that there is a cowboy character who might be out there. I mean, sure, these all could just be references, right? Well, there is one more piece of evidence that actually might imply that the cowboy character is out there. In Chapter 3, in the bottom of the outside the green room area, I don't know what you'd call it, there is this Shutta NPC who talks to you about the history of the Chapter 3 Dark World. He says, "The purple world, you think they give the creeps. You have seen naught but that tempered by light. In the once upon a time, there was a land like purple cliffs, a frozen waste, watery basin, a metal desert, but this theater was built upon that, and it grew. Not everyone liked the change. Some people left. Of course, that was in the days of the black and white." What this NPC is saying is that the Chapter 3 Dark World wasn't only the theater, and that originally there were other areas, including a desert, and that, in the days of the black and white, many people left. Black and white, you say, almost like Woody's Roundup. It all starts to make sense. The black and white Woody Darkner left prior to Tenna's overtaking the whole Dark World. Now he's in Asgore's house on the VHS tapes, you know, and I mean, how that works technically, it doesn't matter. You just use that, like, last Thursdayism logic, like how Ram remembered hanging out with King and Queen and Tenna. It's like, oh yeah, the Woody guy left, and now he's in Chapter 5.
I'm not sure it's, like, entirely last Thursdayism. Because, like, I mean, what you do to the objects before you create a Dark World is still going to affect how the objects act. It's just that they're not alive in the way that they are in the Dark World.
Alternatively, if you do want some kind of
Although I will say, the reason I think this is mainly because of my bias that I don't really like last Thursdayism that much.
Explanation as for how the Cowboy Darkener could have left. It could be explained that before the land was only television, it was because Asgore lived in the house, and when he left and took his VHS tapes of Woody with him, that's why they left the Dark World. So what could this boss be? Well, I feel the need to make a few suggestions as to how it could all play out. First off, I've really enjoyed the fun names that the fandom gives to their own Woody OCs, but considering this is a plant-themed Dark World, couldn't his name just be Woody? Because, you know, maybe he'll be in a less floral area, rather, you know, in an area dominated by trees, and...
I think that would be copyright infringement. Like, if I held the Jack of Spades and said, "Hey, it's me, Lancer, I love the lasagna," he'd remember saying that? Yeah.
Heavy, thicker, woody plants?
I mean, like, if I remember correctly, the backstory that Sham gives on the Chapter 1 Dark World about, like, Lightners used to be like gods to us, but then we were abandoned by them, is based on the fact that they're in the unused classroom. Which, you know, hasn't been used.
It's also worth mentioning, as much as this is a total stretch, Wikipedia describes woody plants as plants that produce wood as their structural tissue, thus having a hard stem. In cold climates, woody plants further survive winter or dry season above ground. Now consider, if the Cowboy Secret Boss was originally part of the Chapter 3 Dark World, being a woody plant could have allowed him to survive in hotter climates. Also, considering the cold and snow are recurring themes and have come up in numerous chapters, Wood D theory might stand a chance even in an area taken over by
Amazing
snow
name.
or against an OL. It makes sense for this theoretical character to be made of a more woody substance. After all, that terribly frightening bastard Howdy Doody is made of pine. As far as how the secret boss could tie into the storyline, I'm no longer sure of that. The thing is, after Spamton, my secret boss predictions mostly focused on the silly, crazy characters who knew more than they let on, and could tell Chris dark truths about their reality, about being controlled, and about freedom. At this point, that's sort of off the table. The Roaring Knight was a mandatory fight and said nothing. Gerson focused entirely on Susie and the power to change fate, so the Chapter 5 secret boss's motives and overall story arc are relatively unpredictable. Sure, it could tie into Asgore's past, Dreamer family.
Woody theory, like he's a One Piece character. But yeah, I think like there's so many different directions that the final secret boss could go in. I mean, like, we have does very little and then tries to kill you when you get in a fight with him. We have acts like your friend and then tries to kill you after, well, as the soundtrack says, deal gone wrong. We have just fucking appears and kills you. We have actually good character who doesn't even try to kill you in his boss fight. Like, maybe the final one is like when we first meet Wood D theory, he's all insane and tries to kill us right away, but then maybe after we continue to see him and he like slowly begins to recuperate. Maybe he gets the friend inside him back or something. I don't know. That's just the first thing I'm throwing out here.
History, Asgore's role as a police officer, considering Woody was a sheriff.
Oh yeah, that's another thing. We have a canceled sheriff versus a fired sheriff. Like, some of these parallels. I do know that it could just be typewriter monkeys and all that, but it's funny to think about.
Or something totally unpredictable. I'd like to actually throw this one to you guys. What do you think a theoretical Chapter 5 Cowboy Secret Boss fight would be about story-wise? So, there you have it. Woody theory is not entirely dead. We've just been wrong about where it was this whole time. It's not Chapter 3, it's Chapter 5. Thank you for what... Wait. There's more? Wait 1 second. Going back to woody plants, you know what's a woody plant? A rose, like the rose that was cut from the Weird Rap cutscene in Chapter 5. And wait one more second. Take a look at this man. His name, Dr. Woody Flowers, who was inducted into the STEM Hall of Fame. This orange flower, it's called Cowboy's Delight. And take a look at Asgore's flower collection. Seem familiar? This orange flower might be Cowboy's Delight. I don't know. Unfortunately, I can't really do this bit this time. There aren't thousands of random pieces of evidence to, put all together at the end like last time. The thing is, last time that evidence was all paper thin, despite there being...
yeah, it's basically a bunch of very, substantial, but not the best evidence for Woody Theory 1 versus a few, real smoking guns for Woody Theory 2. It's gone for a minute, what was it?
Being so much of it. Unfortunately, I can't really do this bit this time. There aren't thousands of random pieces of evidence...
Something about trying to go insane for a minute.
To, put all together at the end like last time. The thing is, last time that evidence was all paper thin, despite there being so much of it, whereas this time around, there's actually some pretty solid evidence. It feels less like a crazy long shot this time. If I'm being entirely honest...
Okay, hold on. If you want to criticize Deltarune's combat, here's something. I don't like how the Pippins only have one attack, and that attack, fucking sucks. Instead, guns could lead to Batman. I really hate the attack that these guys use. And I'm pretty sure even in the Chapter 1 era, Toby said something like, oh yeah, I originally planned for these guys to be enemies, but then I scrapped them because I didn't like their attack patterns. Their attack patterns were just not fun. Pippins have an RNG-based attack, and I assume Bet was the same. Yeah, I'm not sure if the dice continuously cycle between 1 through 4 in normal, but I do know that they do when you use Bet.
Gun to my head, Woody Theory has about a 6 out of 10 chance of actually being real.
Honestly, I think he's giving himself too little credit here. Okay, talking about another one of his opinions that I disagreed with. Spooky Dude does, frequent theory reviews where people can send their theories to him through email. And he, essentially platforms them. I think it's really great, and it's cool that he's doing that. But, like, there was one time where, might have been the most recent theory review, where someone submitted Azrael Knight, and he gave it 10 out of 10, which, like, to be fair, Spooky Dude isn't the one who came up with that. He was just convinced by the other person. And I believe he still said, like, it's not as likely as other Knight candidates. But, like, look, I'm not that big of a fan of Azrael Knight because it just makes Deltarune's story Undertale again. But, yeah, I don't think he's giving himself enough credit here. I'd put it at least a 7.
But, hey, there is...
That Azrael Knight is better than Azrael's Dust 2? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Even if I had plenty of problems with the Azrael Knight that was presented in that Spooky Dude video, comparing that to the Azrael Knight that Jaru came up with is like night and day.
Another theory.
Or like the black of the dark world and the white of a monster soul. I'm sorry, that's just like a really stupid piece of evidence that I keep remembering.
See, one thing I find really funny about the original Woody theory is that ever since it got popular, once in a while I'll get a very confused comment on the video wondering why more than half of the Woody theory video is not Woody theory. In reality, I actually made that video to comment on the fandom theorizing that Toby Fox is tricking us and lying in the newsletters. The Woody theory portion of the video was just me saying, okay, if you really think Toby's hiding secrets in every sentence, here's how far you can take it. It ended up growing and becoming this huge thing, though.
Yep.
Now, halfway through Woody Theory 2, I would like to pause and, yet again, pivot to something completely different. There is a different second Woody Theory, a second Woody Theory, that might seem a little bit more likely than the one I just said, and it's that Toby was sort of lying, but also telling the truth. Chapter 3 has a lot of cut areas. There was indeed a cowboy segment that was cancelled, as well as another whole board, and looking back at the night again, it is sort of a weird boss, isn't it? It's the only secret boss that is not accessed the same way as the others, and it doesn't have the freedom motif in its theme. What am I getting at? Well, what if Woody Theory was true? 100% true. The cowboy
I'm not sure about this bit of the video.
Being cancelled was actually part of the storyline, as we see Tenna reference. There was a planned abandoned cowboy area with a Woody-style character as the intended secret boss, or just an NPC. However, it was then actually cancelled for pacing reasons. It's really strange that the Shadow Mantle isn't actually required to defeat the Knight. Shalom told us that without the Shadow...
I mean, like, I just think that this evidence doesn't make that much sense, because if stuff was planned to be cancelled from the start, like, I don't think, like, Deltarune devs would reorder, like, an entire secret boss. But hey, maybe some documentary on how Deltarune was made will come out in 10 years and it'll turn out that that was actually true.
Shadow Mantle, we're not going to be able to get that third crystal. And yet, we are. The fight is extremely difficult, and if the Shadow Mantle made it so the fight was, well, a lot less difficult, then I guess I'd understand, but it really doesn't.
I mean, like, it makes one party member take a third of the normal damage, which is the difference between the Knight dealing a bit more damage than Tenna and the Knight one-shotting you. Like, it is still very important. And I believe the Shadow Mantle also makes it so that single target attacks from the Knight also are more likely to target the holder, so that other party members don't get one shot out of nowhere.
It just gives you a little more defense, while the fight remains extremely difficult. It took me over an hour to beat the Knight, so what's the deal with that? Why is the Shadow Mantle way less important than suggested? I think most people were expecting that the secret boss would be genuinely unbeatable unless we have it. And perhaps that was the plan, but
I am surprised that it wasn't genuinely unbeatable.
It was scrapped. Adding a cowboy section on top of the 3 game boards, one which was eventually scrapped, on top of the mantle section, on top of the Tenna fight, on top of the complex egg puzzle, on top of the Knight fight, would have just been too much. So, the Woody character was legitimately cancelled. I have no proof of this. I don't think there's anything wrong with this either. This isn't me criticizing Toby Fox or anyone on the dev team. That's just something that happens in game development. Sometimes things don't work out and you just have to cut them. And there's zero proof that this was actually the case. It's just wild speculation based on the fact that Toby said a cowboy section was cancelled. And it was. Tenna references a cancelled cowboy show and cut dialogue, and the secret boss works completely differently than all the rest, and lacks the freedom motif all the others have. I've also seen people on the internet suggest that that NPC's dialogue about all of the lands that used to be part of the Chapter 3 Dark World that were eventually removed was actually commentary on the fact that they did exist in the original plan for the Chapter 3 Dark World, but were scrapped. I mean, a watery basin sounds like a kitchen area or the sink. We know that the best Inu that was on the what was it, the Spanton Sweepstakes, that was actually cut. We see that there's stuff in the code for that awards, the Hall of Fame thing that was never in the game. So maybe that was stuff planned for Chapter 3 that didn't eventually make it. Alternatively, it could be a combination of these two ideas. Perhaps Woody Theory was real, scrapped, and then moved over to Chapter 5. Or maybe I'm half right. There was a Woody character, but he was a silly joke NPC in the planned desert area, and not the secret boss for the scrapped cowboy area. Or maybe Woody Theory 2 is actually real, and we're going to fight him again in Chapter...
We at least know now that none of those areas were... Yes, the Chapter 3 look back. That did come out well after this video.
Chapter 5. I honestly have to say, Woody Theory is one of those things that's incredibly funny to me. To try and sit here and say it's something special or magical would be kind of cringe, but, I mean, isn't it? Woody Theory is rarely even associated with me anymore, and that's not a complaint whatsoever. That's great. I mean, this community took the idea and ran with it. The Friend Inside Me Twitter accounts, the incredible fan-made animations and boss fights, the memes, the jokes, the references, it's sort of inescapable, and as much as it's inherently dumb, it makes me smile every time I see someone lose their minds at the word friend being anywhere near inside. One thing I do think is worth saying about this video is that as soon as I finished chapters 3 and 4, I wanted to make a video on the lore overall. I wanted to make a video about, you know, the prophecy and all that, which I did. And I said that I'd want to make a follow-up video on Friend Inside Me and Woody Theory. I started putting together the evidence. I saw the floral cowboy thing. I thought maybe there's some connection. But the community kind of put this together as well. Like, I've received emails. Even today, as I'm recording this video, I received another email of someone saying Friend Inside Me is possible, and they've sent me the evidence that, you know, I have in this video and stuff. Like, other people are thinking this
Yeah, this might have come out in, like, the same week as another, like, I think it was called Neo Woody Theory, that basically had the same general points, which, again, very funny. He's like a proud father, true.
It is a community effort, I guess, to see so many other people on Twitter who also kind of have, you know, ideas related to this. It's really cool. Again, I don't mean to sound stupid and sappy, but it is kind of cool that this second variation of Woody Theory was sort of created and universally realized by the community over the last few weeks. That's a cool thing, you know what I mean? I mean, Woody Theory 1 was out there, ridiculous, I don't know what I was thinking, and then, you know, everybody went so crazy with it and created their characters and their art and all this stuff, and now it's like everybody's universally on the edge of their seat hoping for Woody in Deltarune, which is so crazy. I think a special shout-out has to be given to the Pete and VB boss fight made by Pootstiblook. If you're looking for a Woody Theory boss fight that is all but canon, this is the video for you. It's pretty much everything I'd want from an actual real Woody character battle, complete with an insane sing-along section towards the end. I know that the wait for chapters 3 and 4 felt like forever, and at times everyone felt like they were going a bit crazy. Cough, cough, that time we all sat around and watched the Staggering Winds livestream for 7 years because it was vaguely connected to Friend Inside Me or something. But I think that with Chapter 5 coming out next year, this is the last time we'll have something like that. A year is not a long wait, and there's still so much to talk about with Chapters 3 and 4 alone, let alone all the future newsletters, any other teasers, and whatever else happens between now and Chapter 5's release. I do look forward to this.
Yeah, I'm glad I watched this video on stream as well. I just wanted to have something more positive, since I do have mixed yet mostly positive opinions on Spooky Dude's content. Alright, well, I think that's all the streaming I want to do for today. So, I guess subscribe to my channel if you're interested. I also have a Blue Sky. I forget if that's linked in my description or not. I mean, same profile picture as my channel, I think. So, it shouldn't be that hard to find. And same name as well. But, anyways, thanks for stopping by. Have a good day.